Okay. All right, so we're doing the portions of Daniel that deal with prophecy, and we're titling this, of course, the Apocalypse of the Old Testament. We're skipping the historical things. We're skipping the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael. We're skipping those, trying to make myself remember them. And Daniel in the Lion's Den, all those great, almost adventure-type stories. And we're going just to the sections that deal with the dreams. We started with Nebuchadnezzar's dream. His dream about the four kingdoms, and that figure is a really good representation of that, very impressive. And that represented the kingdoms that would follow him. He was the head of gold, and the great Roman Empire would be the legs of iron, and the revived Roman Empire, the feet of clay, ceramic clay mixed with iron. And then Nebuchadnezzar had a dream in which he was turned into a beast. It turned out that, of course, it was a prophecy. He was turned into a beast. So for 7 years, he was probably kept up in a park or an inner courtyard, lived like an animal. He came back to himself and praised the God of heaven. I think he believed that God was greater than all the gods, but I don't think he was a believer. He didn't become a Jewish proselyte or anything like that. It'd be interesting one day, get in heaven, and there's old Nebuchadnezzar. That would be very interesting. I don't think that's what happened, but possible, who knows. And so then we have the Daniel has a dream in Daniel chapter 7. And in that dream, let me do a little bit of background here. Turn that on. And a little bit of the background, looking at the outline here. And you can see that we have the introduction, chapters 1 through 2. And then we come to the nations of the earth, their character, relationship, succession, and destiny. Nebuchadnezzar's dream, Nebuchadnezzar's trial of the confessor's faith. That was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Nebuchadnezzar's vision of a high tree. And then we would go to Belshazzar's feast, which has the handwriting on the wall. That took place several decades actually, after Nebuchadnezzar was out of power and had died. And so then we come down to chapter 7, the vision of the beast, the Ancient of Days, and the Son of Man. And so we are here in this section right here, chapter 7, 1 through 8. Now, 1 through 28. We're not going to be doing chapter 8. I had that intention, but I just simply ran out of time. Now, again, I'm going to have Alexander Scorby read for us Daniel chapter 7. So have that in your Bibles. Read along with him. And then we're not going to spend a lot of time going back over the verses after he reads it for us. We're simply going to deal with the questions that come up through that reading. So, Alexander Scorby, Daniel chapter 9.
Chapter 7.
Oh, 7.
In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heavens strove upon the great sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man. And a man's heart was given to it. And behold another beast, a second, like to a bear. And it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured, and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. and it had 10 horns. I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes, like the eyes of man, and a mouth, speaking great things. I beheld till the thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of Days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. I beheld then, because of the voice of the great words which the horns spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, and his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and time. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And there was given him dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. I, Daniel, was grieved in my spirit in the midst of my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. I came near unto one of them that stood by, and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me, and made me know the interpretation of the things. These great beasts, which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom, and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. Then I would know the truth of the 4th beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with his feet, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld, and the same horn made war with the saints, and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, The 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times, and the dividing of time. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. And the kingdom and dominion, and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven, shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Hitherto is the end of the matter. As for me, Daniel, my cogitations much troubled me, and my thoughts changed in me. But I kept that in my heart.
Very interesting reading. My cogitations trouble me. Now, we're still adjusting to the move, and also working the bus route thing. So not getting the stuff I want finished completely, such as handouts. But I'm hoping to have that about another week, and we as much as done with our moving. So as he began this passage, he talked about at the very beginning, he saw in his dream 4 winds that stirred the ocean, and these 4 winds of heaven churning upon the great waters. So usually the sea is usually a symbol for nations or peoples of the earth. We see this in the book of Revelation as well. And the beast rise up out of the sea. And so here in Daniel, and we're going to see almost mirror images of the same terms, the same phrases in Revelation. And I'm emphasizing again, it's the same vision that John saw but expanded, and it's for the same people. The book of Daniel, no one could ever say the book of Daniel was written to the church, because the church didn't exist at that time. And with the book of Revelation, the first 4 chapters were written to the churches of Asia. That would be the typical churches that existed during this time, our church age time. But when the Lord tells to John, come up hither, that ceases, and the rest of that book is for the Jews. Our purpose in having it is so that we can have the comfort and the knowledge and the faith that God has all things in hand. And there are many people who thought for years that we would go through a tribulation or would have postmillennialism, that the kingdom of God would come after the world got better and better. And there are some that believe the church, the New Testament age, had to go through the tribulation. There are many independent Baptists who believe the church goes through the first 3.5 years. And we could look at all those things. There's many reasons why it doesn't work, biblically, and a lot of other reasons, logically. But the main reason is it's taken from the book of Daniel, and Daniel was written to the Jews. We don't fit in there. There's not a place for us in there. The prophecies don't work for the church. And when we get to Daniel chapter 9, this will become even more clear. But the best refutation of post-tribulationalism, mid-tribulationalism, is the book of Daniel. You can't put the church in the book of Daniel, and Daniel is simply an abbreviated version of the book of Revelation from chapter 5 onward. So again, if you keep that straight, you'll never get mixed up on when the church is out of here, and that's going to be before the tribulation. All right, so again, the sea is usually a symbol for nations, and in this case, the Great Sea is the Mediterranean Ocean and the nations that surrounded it. So as he talks about these beasts that are going to come up, it does turn out that they're all kingdoms that arose around the Mediterranean Ocean. That was the ocean of that time period. If you control the Mediterranean, as the Philistines did, as the people of the sea did, as later on the Greeks did, as later on the Romans did, then you control that area. You controlled all that part of the world, and that part of the world, Persia as well. You controlled that empire. And so all of these arise up out of that, and the 4 winds blowing on it are blowing on the same ocean. And so it's the Mediterranean, and the 4 winds, this word in Greek is ruah. We've talked about it before. It means wind, it means spirit. It's not clear which one it's really talking about here, but seeing as this is a vision, it probably is spirit. One commentator said angels, that these are the angels of the Lord. And some people believe that there are angels that are assigned to the different nations of the world. And we also believe that Satan has people or angels or demons that influence powers and governments. So in this case, God, I think, is using his agents, whether they be angels or something else, circumstances, sovereignty, providence, and he stirs up the nations and he brings them to power one after the other. So all this is showing what Nebuchadnezzar learned, that God's in charge. He holds the kings in his hands. He holds the kingdoms in his hand. And here this entire, from the time of Daniel until the time of the end of the world, God has been controlling. God has been taken care of. And so that's what Daniel sees here. And so then he gives this description. He says one was like a lion. And that, of course, it has eagle's wings. One is a bear, and this bear is unique in that it's raised up on one side, and it has 3 ribs in its mouth. I don't think he just went to the barbecue. That's different kind of ribs here. The next one is a leopard, and he had 4 wings and 4 heads. The last one was a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and exceedingly strong, different from all the others. Daniel doesn't know what to make out of it. It's not a beast he even tries to describe. It's not an animal that he's ever seen before. And this one had great iron teeth. It has 10 horns. And then in the interpretation that one of the angels, he just says one standing by, but it's an angel that talks to him. He says it has brass claws. So I didn't put that on here. But it has those descriptions. It's a terrible, dreadful beast. It doesn't look like any other beast that's ever existed. And it has iron teeth. It has 10 horns. And it has brass claws. Now, in the book of Revelation, we have the dragon that rises up, and so that may have been something that Daniel was seeing here. And in fact, this person here put it as a T-Rex. I thought that was kind of interesting. So he made it into a dragon, a T-Rex dragon, and it has 10 horns, Very interesting looking there. But here's the description. And here's Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel chapter 2. And here's the kingdoms that they correspond to. So you have the Babylonian with the wings, which was the head of gold. The Medo-Persian, which became ultimately the Persian Empire. And that's this raised side, this raised hump on its back, one side bigger than the other. That became Persia, so that after just a few years, there was no Medo-Persian Empire, there was just Persia. And then the Grecian Empire with 4 wings and 4 heads. And then Rome, which again is this terrible, dreadful beast never seen before. Call it a dragon, but it has 10 horns. So identifying these further, we see that the lion is Babylon. In fact, this was the national symbol of Babylon, was the winged lion. And Daniel, in his dream, it says that the lion stood up like a man and was given the heart of a man, which is exactly what had happened to Nebuchadnezzar. He had some understanding after God struck him down as a beast, then brought him back, and he again came to himself. And so this may be a reference to what had happened to Nebuchadnezzar. The bear, Media-Persia, a massively powerful kingdom. The raised side, which is combined, but that raised higher side became Persia. The 3 ribs were the nations it consumed to rise to power, which were Babylon, Egypt, and Lydia. Interesting, I don't know, I've heard of Lydia, of course, it's mentioned in the New Testament, but I don't know much about how Lydia was a part of the conquering that took place after Babylon and Egypt. So powerful was Persia. When Artaxerxes decided to march on Greece and tried to take that part of the world, it said that he had an army of 2 million people, 2 million soldiers that marched with him. And they seemed to be unstoppable until they were stopped by the Spartans and I can't remember the other group that was with them. Spartans are the ones that are most famous, but there was another group, not Thracians, it might have been Thracians, but anyway, and they stopped them at the Straits of Thermopylae in that great battle that took place where 300 faced down basically 2 million. And so that stopped their coming in. That's where the battle was reported. The marathon was run, planes of a marathon race took place at that period. So after that, Persia can't make it any further. Greece starts to rise. Alexander the Great, and succeed. In fact, the kingdom of Greece defeated my kingdom for just 4 years, and they were wiped. He had a new way of fighting. His men were extremely dead, and he had a victory, but the Persians could not do it. Artaxerxes and just ran from him until he could run no further, and he was captured or killed. Out of 2 years. And then he died only not even 10 years after that in 323 BC. When he died, his kingdom was divided in between his 4 generals, and that gives us the 4 heads. So King Speed and the 4 heads. One of those generals named Antiochus Epiphanes made himself a god. Epiphanes means God curse, and was the one who tried to Israel worship Greek gods and kicked off the Maccabean revolt. So all these things are tied together. All these things are happening. And then we have the dreadful beast, which is Rome. It's the most powerful, the longest lasting, and the most world-shaping of all empires. We are still greatly influenced by the Roman Empire. Everything from building roads to building cities to concrete to how to run the Republican form of government before they fell under the dictatorship. All that stuff came out of, and so some people say we're really not out that empire. It has diluted itself, spread itself all over, and then one day it's going to live these kingdoms that are going to rise to power again. More about that, of course, in the book of Revelation. We'll be laying those 2 side by side. He sees this beast that he can't describe, full beast. It has 10 horns. And the horns in the Bible represent a symbol of power. So you have 10 horns, that's going to be 10, that's going to be a lot of power. The angel that he asked interpretation of says the word king and the word kingdom are almost interchangeable. So whether these are specific individual leaders, their empires, their kingdoms, it really isn't. 10 kingdoms, and they correspond back to 10 toes. That at the end of his vision, is in that the without hands, feet, 10 horns, 10 toes. These things represent the same thing. They are talking about the same thing. And then from the little horn. A little horn means it wasn't there before. It would be 11 horns. Little horn grows somehow, and it does have the appearance of the power of the 3 of the other horns to their king. So it appears that this little horn, somebody who shouldn't have power, isn't expected to have power, rises to power by conquering 3 other kingdoms, and it would seem that he destroys them. If he tears them up by the roots, then they don't exist anymore. And so he becomes the king, having the power of 3 kingdoms, and then the influence control all the other kingdoms that are in existence at the time. He continues to watch until he sees the days to seat. These are that are not found too much outside of the book Daniel. We use all the time, but this is I've heard God describe, and so we know that this is God, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, eternal, and God. He sees in this vision of God. Now he doesn't see God, of course, but he sees, as John did, seated upon the throne. John's description is more powerful, it's more descriptive, it's brighter, but here he describes how his hair is like, and he sits down, and that means, of course, when they sit down, it means the time is now. You sit down to make judgment. You sit down to teach. It means we're commenced. And the book, of course, represents judgment. In the case of this, it's the little horn, who, of course, is the same thing. The books are opened, and the form of words that the little horn speaks is blasphemy against the Ancient of Days and beguilement of the nations and kingdoms of the world. The phrase season and time and a half. Let me go find that. Verse 20. We shall speak great words, terrible words, things spoken, things that I heard words note. Not have to hearing these things. 5 against the Most High, and change times and into his hand and times and times. So 1 year, times is 2, and dividing of times is. So you understand, you've already seen where this is going. That's 3.5 years. The tribulation is 7 years long. It's divided into 2 3.5-year time periods. The midpoint is when the Jews finally realize the Antichrist is not their Messiah, and that's when the judgment intensifies. That's the time of Jacob's series in a descriptive way, but he's talking thing that John talks about 3.5 years and half a time, dividing of time. All right. Then he sees the Son of Man. Of course, we know is Jesus. And this phrase is extremely significant. Most times would have associated it with Ezekiel. When God spoke to Ezekiel, he called him Son of Man through the whole thing, because he represented mankind for God as he gave the prophecy to him. But in this particular case, when he says Son of Man, we of course know that this is talking about Jesus, the Messiah. And when we come to the New Testament, this is what Jesus uses to refer to himself time and time again, that he is the Son of Man. And this is a direct quote from the book of Daniel. So one of the people, the Pharisees during that time, hearing that phrase, say, he's either crazy or he is the Messiah. We talked about, I think, the idea of blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. I think what that means is they knew he was the Messiah, but because he was not going to play their game, and therefore they were going to reject the Messiah. In the past, we've talked about there was actually a belief that there was supposed to be a Messiah who died of the lineage of Joseph, the house of Joseph, and he was the suffering Messiah. They may have thought they were doing what God would have them to do by killing this Messiah and then waiting for the Messiah from the tribe of Judah. We're not told that, but there was a teaching during that time that it wasn't the same Messiah twice. It was 2 Messiahs, one from Joseph who would suffer and die, and one from the tribe of Judah who would come. They thought it was the same Messiah, the same thing, rather than the idea of 2 different Messiahs. How they would arrive at that and be doing God's work, putting him to death. This that before, and again, it's just the comparison of the 2. Here's Nebuchadnezzar's dream, here's the fulfillment, and here's Daniel's vision of the 4 beasts. And here's where the interpretation is, the prophecy is. Here's the world powers that are talked about. The head is the Neo-Babylonian, the breasts and the arms, Medo-Persia, and thighs, legs and feet, the Romans. Here the lion is is Babylon, the bear is Persia, the leopard is Greece, and the diverse beast, the dreadful beast, the terrible beast. And then this, of course, has the 10 toes, which is not listed here, but is listed here. So we have the 10 horns, which correspond to the 10 toes. And then the first time we've heard about this little horn. When Daniel begins to dream and have these dreams, it changes the book of Daniel. But this, all the dreams were had by Nebuchadnezzar, and Daniel interpreted them for Nebuchadnezzar. Now Daniel is in the middle of this, and he's interpreting himself. And he thought, I, Daniel, saw this. I, Daniel, was troubled. And it switches from the world there, and it switches to the Jewish place in those nations of the world. because he talks about this little horn declares war and tries to kill the people of God. And so now we see here is Israel's place as these kingdoms come to power, especially during that time of the 10 horns, little horn that rises, or that we know is going to be the Antichrist. So now, and in Daniel chapter 9, it's going to be even more so. We're going to see how Daniel, in that dream, puts Israel in the middle of that so that they understand what's going to happen. We're going to hear about the abomination of desolation that Daniel speaks of and Jesus speaks of as the key point and the midpoint of that tribulation. So everything changes from here till the end of the book. It's about Israel in their place in this time of history, and how it's going to fit. Ultimately, he says, with their Messiah, all this is going to belong to them. And the persecution they go through, the trouble they go through, it's going to be repaid or rewarded, because the Antichrist is going to be struck down. He's going to be judged, and they will take the kingdom and have the kingdom for themselves. All right. Again, I'd like to have a little bit more, and when we get to this next part of it, I'm a little bit further down the road from moving. We should be a lot better off. That's my plan anyway. And I'm going to practice, what was that song we sang? Have a new heaven. Have a new body. I'll have a new life. That song. Maybe we'll get that down too. All right, any questions, discussion on Daniel chapter 7? There's one more dream in Daniel chapter 8. It's kind of quick. I'm tempted just to mention it and then run into Daniel chapter 9. So we'll see, depending on how much time I have next Wednesday as I work on it. Huh? Mm-hmm. Yes.